What up, homies? I am the Comics Kid 2099, and as I have done earlier this week, I've got three graphic novels that I'm reviewing, and that's why I'm wearing the same shirt, because I'm filming all of these back to back. And the third and final graphic novel that I'm reviewing for this week is The Superior Foes of Spider-Man Volume 1, Getting the Band Back Together. I have come to the conclusion somewhat recently that for a long time now, I have been going about comics the wrong way. For far too long, I have been seeking out comics that feature characters that I really like just because those comics have characters that I really like. For example, I'm a huge X-Men fan, and I'm a huge Batman fan. Let's go ahead and stick with X-Men, because I think it applies more for the purposes of this conversation. I'm a gigantic X-Men fan, and so for a long time now, I have been seeking out X-Men books that I've read before in single issues, and I absolutely know 100% that those stories are just awful, but I'm still seeking out the trade paperbacks because it's X-Men, and I'm trying to fill up my collection. And when you do that, when that's how you read comics, it gets to a point where it stops being fun. When you're reading it because it's more like homework than it is just having fun, then naturally it's not going to be fun. So for me, I've been reading a lot of X-Men stuff that I just don't like, but I keep reading it because it's X-Men. And I'm not saying that I'm going to stop doing that, because once you get to a certain point and you have like 200 X-Men trades, I don't know if I have that many, but I have a lot. When you have that many, you don't just want to stop right then, you kind of want to keep going. But I realized that I want to go back to having fun when I read comic books again. And I still have fun every once in a while. A lot of the stuff that I read that is not in the category of X-Men or Batman, a lot of that stuff, I read it because I'm interested in it. But I wanted to get to a point where I would seek out books that I might not have necessarily read otherwise, but I had heard good things about. And this was the first one where I'm doing that. I bought that a few days ago, along with a few other books. One of them was an X-Men book, but I got this. And I should go ahead and say I'm not really a huge Spider-Man fan. I have, I think, 3 or 4 Spider-Man trades, not that many, and I had heard really great things about this series, so I went ahead and bought it. And I'm going to go ahead and say, it turns out this series is a lot better than what I had heard. I had only heard some reviews about the first or second issue. I didn't hear very many reviews, but the people who I heard who were reviewing it, they were saying it's a lot of fun, but they weren't sure if they were going to keep going, or at least one of them said that. And I was thinking, okay, I've heard that this is a lot of fun, and it's got a very interesting premise, because instead of being a superhero comic, it's all about the supervillains. This is a team calling themselves the Sinister Six, even though there's only 5 of them right there. That's kind of a running joke in this book. But yeah, if you throw a whole bunch of supervillains into a comic and make the comic all about them, I am instantly going to be more interested than if it's just another team of superheroes. Because one thing I will say, when you have superhero stories, it tends to be a lot more formulaic. You kind of know what the hero is going to do. They're going to do something heroic. But if you do a comic book about a group of villains, it's a lot more open-ended about what you can do. Are these guys going to continue acting villainous, or are they going to have a soft spot? And all of these guys, or a lot of these guys, they do have a soft spot. Each of them do. But at the same time, over the course of, I think this is 6 issues, yeah. Over the course of 6 issues, it still manages to make all of these characters still villainous, and that works really well for this book, I think. What really captured me about this, there is astoundingly a whole lot of humor in this book. If you are a fan of the 1980s Justice League International comics, you know, the era with Guy Gardner, Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, Black Canary, and the Martian Manhunter, that era of comics by J. M. DeMatteis and Keith Giffen and Mark McGuire, I believe, or Kevin McGuire. Mark McGuire is a baseball player. If you're familiar with that era of Justice League comics, this series reminds me a lot of that. The humor is very similar, and basically this is that Justice League series if the characters were villains instead of superheroes. It's maybe got just a hair more action than it does like sitcom-y humor, but there's still a whole lot of that really funny sitcom-y humor here. I cannot tell you how funny this was for me. Every issue had a really funny laugh-out-loud moment. Sometimes every issue had multiple laugh-out-loud moments. And also, accessibility. I am not a Spider-Man fan, like I said, but I found this to be very accessible. Now, sometimes it will throw a character in there and it will expect you to know who that character is, and sometimes I do know, sometimes I don't. Most of these characters, like the Chameleon, Hammerhead, there's another character who shows up at the very end that I won't mention by name, but these characters are fairly, I guess Chameleon is fairly well known, but most of them I don't really know a whole lot about. Like Hammerhead, I know that he's a gangster in the Marvel Universe, and that's all I know. And sometimes I feel like this book expects you to know more about these characters, but I still think it does a pretty good job of catching you up. Like, for example, one of the Thunderbolts, Mach 7, he's called Mach 7 in this book, but I think when he was in the Thunderbolts, he was Mach 5. He shows up, and if you've never read the Kurt Busiek Thunderbolt series from the 90s, this is still gonna tell you everything that you need to know. And I thought that was very good because I've only read a very little bit of the Thunderbolts, and I don't know enough about it to know offhand all the members of the team. And it's been a long time since I've read any Thunderbolts. So this book, I cannot recommend it enough. This is maybe right now my favorite series from Marvel. Granted, I don't read all that much current stuff from Marvel. Usually I'm picking up older stuff, stuff from maybe 5 years ago, or even stuff from the 1980s. Usually I'm reading older books and stuff. I'm not reading what's absolutely the newest thing. But out of all the stuff that I'm reading that is fairly new, this is definitely one of my favorite books. It is outstandingly hilarious, and when I was reading the first issue or two, I was thinking, okay, I'm not really sure if I want to read Volume 2. By the end of it, I was 100% sure that I was going to be reading Volume 2. I can't wait for it to come out. I'm going to be really sad when this series ends, because apparently it was meant to be like a 12-issue miniseries, and then it became kind of a cult following, or a gathered cult following, rather. And so now it is planned to go up to at least issue 17. So it seems like even though they've expanded the series to last a little bit longer, it is still going to be a limited series, and it's not going to be a permanent ongoing, which admittedly that's probably a good idea, because I could see this going one of two ways. One, if Nick Spencer, the writer on this book, if he just kept going, 50 or 60 issues in, eventually I feel like he would probably lose steam. Or he would end his run at like issue 20 and then pass it off to somebody else, and the humor just would not be the same. It wouldn't be as funny, it wouldn't be the same type of humor, and then I wouldn't be very happy with that either. So admittedly, begrudgingly, I am saying it's probably a good idea that this series is getting canceled at issue 17, or not really being canceled, it's ending as planned at issue 17. But I'm really looking forward to Volume 2, even though I'm not reading the Superior Spider-Man, or really any Spider-Man for that matter. This is definitely something that I really enjoy, and I recommend anyone, Spider-Man fan or not, to read this series, because it is a heck of a lot of fun, and I cannot wait to read more from it. So that's all I have to say about this book. I hope that I was able to convince you guys to go and grab it, and I will see you guys later in this week, either tomorrow or Saturday. I'm still not sure when I'm going to be putting this video up, either Thursday or Friday, I'm not sure, but by the time you see this video. So I will be seeing you guys later in the week with a review of an episode of Batman Beyond, and I will see you guys then. Have a great day.